Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Raw is Ginger.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Raw is Ginger. And I'm joined today by John Toner, and we are missing our regular Ginger, but we'll plod on as we always do. So, how are you?
Not bad, mate. Not bad. Keeping busy. How are you?
Same, keeping busy. The youngest Wayne, she's away on a school trip for this week, so she comes back tomorrow.
So basically, what you're saying is the bliss stops tomorrow.
The bliss stops tomorrow. Although I have had one here, but she's in high school, so she sort of does her own thing. So
Aye, so that's basically room doors shut. I don't want to speak to you. I'll see you.
pretty much, aye, it's been great.
See, I'm lucky the night the missus is out, so I can be a bit louder and not have the messages coming through my phone. Will you shut up?
Well, just like last week, me and Andrew done a wee bit of a different thing with people who should have been champion that weren't. And this week, I came up with the idea just off the cuff about underrated wrestlers. How many underrated wrestlers are there in the business? Just today, there's so many underutilized people, but throughout the entire history, there's been numerous. And I've come up with a list of 10. So will we just jump into it and start talking?
Fire on.
Right, well, the first person on the list is MVP.
Aye. I mean, you look at how hot he came in and then how quickly that decline just came, not from him, not from anything he done, just from the bookings, how quickly that went. In fact, it was so good when he come back as the whole kind of manager to, see him again and kind of hear him, because you forget as well how good he is with a microphone.
Mm-hmm. I know. It's like in his initial run, they really underutilized him. They should have had him like top tier after the first 6 months, because he came in, he done his thing, and people are like, this guy's gone somewhere. And Vince just didn't see it. Vince saw him as a mid-card guy all his career.
And you wonder as well, though, right, when you look at the likes of MVP, and without kind of throwing in loads of different names, because I know we've got another 9 in the list, but when you think back, and I know a lot of people hate to hear it, but if you think back to, say, the Attitude Era, and I always kind of feel that sometimes Vince looks at every era as that era. Because if you think about how many mid-carders could have very easily stepped up and been top tier, and whoever we're about just now would probably be about that top tier level. Just for them, it was unfortunate that at that time you had these kind of mega stars that were just controlling everything, and but were kind of so over they would never have slid down the pecking order. But I always wondered, did he look at guys like that and maybe compare them to these kind of previous stars and where they fell in the pecking order, and thought, yeah, do you know something? That's where he slots in, forgetting you don't have the top tier guys that you had back then.
Yeah, I can totally see that, especially with the way that Vince worked with people. It's that he had a certain group of people that were always like the top 3 or 4 people. Yeah. And there was never any more in the scene. Maybe he would put some of them in a match with them, but he would never push them further than what they should have been.
And you always seen, other than that wee kind of group, if anybody was going to get a run, it was very much for a title changeover. Yeah. It was never for, okay, do you know what? You've got the belt. Let's see where we go. Mm-hmm. Let's go and see what we do with it. Because you know yourself, and especially more so back then, we would see, and I'm not just talking about Attitude, I'm talking about many different years, but we would see championships, the main titles dropped in like Raws and SmackDowns and all these different shows. Mm-hmm. So you used to know if there was a championship match on, there was a fair chance that it could go either way. Whereas now, it's not even put at every kind of live event. Mm-hmm. It's not always put up for grabs. So you're never kind of seeing that. But again, these other guys that were out with his group were just for a title changeover. Now they could win it in a Raw, SmackDown, have a couple of weeks with it, go to a live event, drop it.
Yeah. Aye. I mean, even if they'd put it on him as like an interim champion until they got the person that they wanted, I think they should have done that so much more with a lot of different people. I mean, if you watch the video last week, there's so many people. I mean, we ended up with a list of 20 people that should have been champion that weren't, just because they weren't a Vince guy.
And you think as well, but like MVP, I mean, his in-ring ability.
Oh, aye.
Was very, very good. It's not just that he came in, quite hot at the beginning, and you forget how good he is in a mic until he kind of come back. I forgot how good he was with a mic in his hand. But his in-ring ability was brilliant, and he was so good. He was one of the few, I think, that could play either side of the fence.
Yeah.
He could be a face, he could be a heel, and he could do it so well, because at points where he was a heel and you've seen just, and I think this is what kind of makes these guys that should be up there, is because just his expressions, his actions, and being a heel, where you could see the wee kind of looks where he's looking to, do something illegal in the match or whatever else to get one over. And it was just brilliant. And he played that perfectly. But at the same time, if you needed the crowd to cheer him, he could. My couch is gone, mate. 2 seconds.
I mean, even when MVP went to Impact, they didn't really know how to use him either.
I feel there's some people that are in that kind of bracket, and I don't think there's actually loads of people in this bracket that go to numerous promotions and they just don't know how to use them. It's nothing to do with their ability or anything. They just don't quite know how best to utilise them. So are they top tier? Are they mid card? Are they somebody that's going to put somebody over? Are they somebody that we need to put over? Are they going to? And you feel with MVP that was very apparent.
Aye. I mean, when he came back for the Royal Rumble, the crowd just went absolutely mental when his music hit. They're like, oh my God, it's MVP. And he was a bit, bigger than what he was when he left. He'd put on a bit of weight, but he came into the ring and he hadn't missed a step. It had been like about 5 or 6 years, he'd said, since he'd actually wrestled full time. And he hadn't missed a step. And he's got back into shape because he was supposed to be there for Royal Rumble in the Raw, and that was going to be it. And they're like, no, we need you back. And then that's when he started doing all the stuff with Bobby Lashley and that, and the Hurt Business, and you just saw how much that exploded.
Yeah. No, I definitely think he's very underrated, because I think when you're talking numerous different scenes and stuff, when you talk about your best champions, your best matches, your top this, your top that, he's never in any of the lists, but he's a name that when you then throw it out, you go, oh God,
aye.
So who's your next on the list?
Well, my next on the list is Lance Storm. A bit controversial because I know a lot of people didn't like him.
I hated him. I think he was overrated, if anything. He was one of the guys that looked like a machine. His in-ring work was brilliant, but had the personality of a lamppost.
Yeah.
And I could actually link him probably to a Cesaro.
Aye. I mean, because when I started watching wrestling, I was watching it on Sky. We got a channel that showed WCW. So I was watching WCW and WWF at the time. And I saw all these smaller guys like Lance Storm and Chris Jericho and Eddie Guerrero and all that coming into WCW. And I was watching them going, this is better than what WWF's doing, because WWF had all the big characters. It had these people, whereas WCW, it was wrestlers.
You felt like WCW was initially very much about the wrestling and what went on in the ring, whereas WWF wanted to create this kind of theatre and this story and this drama. Put on some great matches, don't get me wrong.
Oh God, aye.
But the overall kind of 2-hour shows it was back then was very much theatre.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when you switched it to WCW, you did see kind of consistent match after match.
Aye. And the thing with Lance Storm is his in-ring ability, like you said. There was very few people that were on par with him. I went back and watched a lot of his older stuff, and his in-ring ability never changed. He never missed a step. For WCW, going to Japan, and ECW, and WWE, his in-ring ability was immense. You could put him in a match with anybody, and he could go and have like 30-minute matches. But like you said, he didn't have that much personality as a wrestler. I mean, I've seen interviews with him, like out with, and he's like, because he is deadpan, he's like, that's just the way I am. But he's actually a really funny guy. I've seen interviews and he's like laughing and telling jokes and stuff. And it's like, where was this guy?
Because the thing is, he was very much, the way his personality was, it was very much like, even if you gave him a manager, say to like a Paul Heyman type,
aye,
I don't think that would have worked, because it just didn't, in the ring, when you think about, some of your top end guys, it just, they all had that bit about them. Even take away the microphone, because not all of them spoke a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at in-ring, they had that kind of personality that brought the kind of crowd in and everything else.
Yeah.
Whereas, as great as he was, it just didn't seem to have that connection.
Aye. I think it was because he didn't have like the mic work as well as some of the other people. I think that's what held him back. So I don't think it was people holding him back, because he held like numerous titles in numerous companies. So he was very successful. It's just, if they let him have his own personality and they let him on the mic and not this character, I think he could have been a lot more successful.
Yeah. And I think sometimes that's probably the kind of way it was, that, because it, like, especially in like kind of WWF/WWE, because it's so theatrical at times in regards to the characters, you basically get told, this is your character, this is how we want you to play it. And the thing is, if you want to get a paycheck at the end of the month, that's exactly what you're going to do. To be fair, for something, and how I've kind of spoke about me, I mean, it's some length of time in the business.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't like a flash in the pan, because again, it's a name that you mention that, and so many generations know who it is and know who you're talking about. But again, he was never up here, but he was never down here. And I don't even think I would have said that he was the top end mid card. He was very much borderline in that.
Yeah.
And it was just that way something else was given in there. It could have definitely propelled right up.
Mm-hmm. Aye. Well, we'll move on to the next one, and this is going back a wee bit. Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, who actually we had on last week's list, who should have been champion but wasn't he?
So, yes, I don't know if I would think, at the time, I think he was underrated. I think now when people look back, they definitely see the ability. I think now, I mean, hindsight's a great thing. I think people look back now, and he's rated higher now when people look back than he was at the time. I definitely think underrated at his time, but I think now, people look back and, when they put the kind of VCs on and stuff in the wrestling, and when they do videos on him, as it's been done numerous times, and you see the kind of different things, you go, wow, and everybody's always in awe of his ability and his work. I think now he's not underrated with people looking back, but at the time he was very underrated.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just some of the matches that he had in like the early 80s with Ric Flair, I mean, they were like 30, 40-minute bloodbaths that they had.
And not a lot of people back then could go into a match with Ric Flair and do that.
Aye.
There was honestly, I think, there was only a select amount of people that could do it.
Aye.
Because of the way Ric Flair wrestled, because of the type of matches he had. There wasn't a lot of guys that could go into that and come out how he came out. And I think, again, it's maybe of his time. Because when you look at some of the guys that were about of his time, he was playing kind of second, third, fourth fiddle to these guys.
Yeah.
And it's not until we look back now and we go, wow, look at the ability, look at the matches, look at what the guy could do, that you think we were so blessed at that time to have guys like him.
Aye. I mean, like you said, there was only like a few people that could go in and have matches with Ric Flair in like the height of his prime and go 30, 40-minute matches and be bloodbaths. There was him, Buddy Rogers had some really good matches with Ric Flair.
Yeah.
And Dusty Rhodes.
Dusty Rhodes had some cracking matches.
And I mean, he's not on the list because I think he was fairly rated for his time, because he came in and done what he had to do and people loved him because he was the everyman. He looked like your average guy.
He was very much, I don't think, underrated. Underutilised, yes.
Aye.
Underrated, no.
Aye. No, I completely agree with you there, because you say, who's like greatest wrestlers of this era, that era? You get to a certain era, it's like, Dusty, Ric Flair, they'll obviously be the top two in like the early 80s.
And they're always given in the same breath.
Exactly. Because you can't really have one without the other.
Yeah.
Aye. But Ricky Steamboat definitely was underutilised when he got to WWF at the time, and they gave him the Dragon thing.
Yeah.
And theatrically, that worked fantastically. And he'd done the job. He'd done what he had to do. He's got kids. As Heath Slater says, I've got kids. He came in, like, this is what we're going to do. He's like, fair enough, point me to the ring. And he done the job. But he should have been more used in WWF. But I think it's because he didn't come in as a WWF guy. He was just there after he'd done his stint with the NWA and WCW and all the independent scene. And they got him in.
I mean, again, it's definitely somebody that I think, and I think this way a few wrestlers, and Dusty Rhodes is included in this, that was 15 years ahead of his time.
Yeah.
15, 20 years ahead of his time, because they came in that kind of, Raw as War kind of era.
Mm-hmm.
They're top level.
Yeah.
They're guys that the crowd always got behind and always would get behind, and they can put on fantastic matches. And it's unfortunate, because I know in any kind of sport, in any way of life, it happens. But I think definitely for him, he was 15 years ahead of his time. I think 15 years later, and he would have been one of the most utilised and remembered guys for what he'd achieved.
Aye, definitely. Which takes me on to the next big man, because we're talking about Dusty Rhodes. Bam Bam Bigelow.
I loved Bam Bam Bigelow.
Absolutely loved him. Even when he was a heel, you're like, I want him to win.
Yeah. And there's not many heels. There's a few over the years, but not many where you're sitting and you do feel a sense of, I want him to win. If he wins, I'm going to be pretty happy with this.
Aye.
Because obviously the whole theatrics is, you want the face to win, and the heel, you want to lose. When they win, you're meant to be raging, gutted, booing, going off your nut.
Aye.
But he was one of the guys that if he won, I was quite happy.
Mm-hmm. He was always, when he was a bad guy, I want him to win. There was him and there was Mr. Perfect.
Yeah.
That I always wanted they two to win, no matter who they were fighting.
And for the size of Bam Bam, the ability and agility he had in that ring was phenomenal.
Aye.
I mean, I would honestly go as far as saying that, I mean, Undertaker's always remembered in being height-wise a big guy and, you know, some of the stuff he could do.
Mm-hmm.
I would go on to say Bam Bam was right up there with ability-wise with him for
Definitely.
the size.
Definitely. I mean, him and Vader.
Yeah.
I mean, if you watch some of Vader's stuff for Japan, he would do like moonsaults.
Yeah.
And so with Bam Bam, moonsaults, running jump over the top rope. And it's like, how can somebody that big move like that?
It's phenomenal because you do think to yourself, you look at him and you go, in any walk of life, you should be out of breath when you get up these stairs.
Aye.
But you're going out and you're putting on these matches with this kind of ability, this kind of agility that are lasting, 20, 30 plus minutes.
Aye. And he was barely breaking a sweat.
Aye.
I get from my sofa to the room and I'm like,
that's how we were late in starting.
That's it, aye.
Until the both of us would get our breaths back.
That was it, aye. I mean, I've got my inhaler here, so.
I mean, now you're needing assistance to breathe.
Exactly. And he was like the age I'm more than now, doing all that stuff still.
Flying over the top ropes, moonsault, and just no hassle.
And also, he was actually a legitimate hero. He was walking by a house one day, saw that it was on fire, heard that there was wains in, ran through doors, grabbed the wains and got them out, ended up with a lung infection, and then wrestled the next night.
And I mean, you think about it as well, that is, when you talk about old school people being built differently, that's very much it. I mean, these days, it's all, oh, do you know what? Let's take the kind of publicity and the adulation and let's jump on the back of that. And let's not wrestle for a few weeks, but make an appearance and do all that. And that's very much how you would see that situation going down now.
Aye. Mm-hmm. But I think he was completely underrated in his time because he was just this big guy who they could bring out for a showcase match because they knew no matter who they put him in the ring with, he could make them look good, even when he was squashing them.
Yeah. So how many have you given me so far?
That was the fourth one.
Both. So I agree with 3.
Don't agree with 3.
Well, not. I'm not agreeing with Landstorm. I understand it. I'm not agreeing with it.
Well, we kicked out Rey Mysterio and we kept in Hulk Hogan.
I mean, I thought it was going to be overrated, guys. So I had a 45-minute speech on how Rey Mysterio is overrated.
Well, I decided not to go the overrated one because I knew I could go away and come back in an hour and you'd still be berating Rey Mysterio.
I mean, it's a fucking disgrace, man. It's a disgrace.
Why is he the United States champion?
I know. There's so many people that would benefit from that or finish off parts of their careers with that. Aye. And we've got it in somebody that
doesn't need it.
There's no purpose on it whatsoever. There is no purpose for him to have it. There's no purpose. It's not required in any which way when there's so many guys that could be doing with that push or having that time with a title and building up. But instead, we give it to a guy that's just... Next one, because I'll go on for ages.
Well, the next one, because we're talking about people that are small, Dean Malenko.
And I like him.
I loved him until he came to WWF because they knew how to use him in WCW. Even though he was wee, he could come in and he could legitimately rip people apart.
And see, again, I mean, he was one of the guys that, because I remember watching the WCW as well, and I agree when he came over to like WWF, WWE, he was very wrongly used.
Yeah.
But I could never get into, I didn't like, again, I maybe felt, because he had the mic a bit, especially in WCW, I didn't feel that he done great with that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? I don't know, for me, it was just, he was always one of the guys, yeah, he's there, yeah, he puts on decent enough matches, but it wasn't that guy that, like a Bam Bam, that you're getting out your seat for.
Aye.
And I never thought, for me, he was in that kind of bracket.
I can see where you're coming from with that. Just because he did spend the majority of his career in WWF, WWE, and he gets stuck with he wasn't a WWF guy.
Yeah.
We got them for WCW before we bought them. And they were using them well to start with. But then Vince bought WCW and it's like, I don't need to use these guys well anymore. I was just pushing them to show that I can do better with their ex-talent.
And when he bought WCW, it's like, well, is there a real need to push much? Because where are they going to go?
Exactly.
They'll happily kick about here, take paychecks. They will do things like, kick about with mops or do this or do that.
Aye.
Because what else are they going to do?
Exactly. They need money. But aye, that's why I've got him on the list, is because when he got to WWF, he was completely underrated and underused for his in-ring ability. Because, again, you look at his WCW stuff, you look at a lot of the stuff that he done in Japan, and that stuff was amazing.
But it's the same again. I mean, you look at historically, even up until now, you look back at guys now, and there's many guys people can go out there and Google that when you look at their work in Japan and then you look at them in WWF or WWE, you wouldn't believe that was the same guy you were watching. You would think,
Aye.
no, that's a stunt double. That's not him. But
well, just saying that, have you seen any of Hogan's Japan stuff?
Yeah.
Completely different guy.
Yes.
He was actually wrestling.
Aye. He was actually very impressive.
He was.
With that. And
then he came back and just clothesline, lift up, leg drop.
And the thing is, too, it was because that was the script. That's what they believed people wanted to see. So that's what we're going to do. And he doesn't need to really do too much to get the adulation that they wanted him to get.
I know. So you've agreed with 3, you've not agreed with 2?
Yes. We're doing well so far.
We're doing well. Well, that'll move us on to the next one. William Regal.
Love William Regal. Definitely agreeing with this one. Absolutely love the guy.
And again, he was on the list last week. Somebody that should have been WWE champion.
And I think the problem for him was that in WWF, WWE, they never got the character right.
Yeah.
To be at that level. They tried, I mean, remember he's a man's man and coming down like that. And and he was so good. His in-ring was absolutely outstanding. He could talk in a mic.
Oh, aye.
And his mic ability, I mean, I think he's one guy who you can see throughout the years, if you get back to his early stuff until even when he was running like NXT, for example, and in between, you can see the progression of his mic work.
Yeah.
The improvements on it. He continued to grow and get better. I absolutely loved him and felt so gutted because they just didn't have that character that worked for the top level. They just never quite. And again, we've spoke about it with a few others that you think with him, it was very much in the minds of Vince and anybody else, it was, you're a mid-carder. That's where you're going to kick about. That's what you're going to do. These are characters for you to be a mid-carder, not to be top level.
I think Vince was actually trying to push him because when he left NXT to go to AEW, he still had a wrestling contract as a wrestler
and
not a backstage. And he's like, so he's like, what do I do? Do I have to pay to break this contract? Vince is like, no, we'll still give you the money. So he was paid by AEW and WWE because Vince liked him so much. I think the only reason that he didn't get to like the top tier was himself, with his addictions and the painkillers and stuff like that. And he sort of he was like his own worst enemy. So when he got successful, he would break down and go, "What, do I deserve this?" And then the addictions would come back, and then he'd go into rehab and stuff like that. And I don't think that when people look back, they'll remember the fact that he had all these title runs. All they'll remember is his ability to be where they needed him to be, because he was always there. The whole Attitude Era, and just a bit after that, he was there. And he is always one of the people that you'll remember. I mean, all that stuff that he done with Tajiri, that was fantastic.
It was outstanding. And I mean, the thing is, and I agree with the whole addiction point, but me personally wouldn't. Yeah, he's got to take an element of responsibility and stuff, and I get that. But there's so many that we've seen.
Obviously, Darren had
issues like that. Sorry, I put this light on and it's now flashing. So due to my epilepsy, I'll need to turn that off, or else it's going to be 30 minutes of me having a seizure and then sleep. And that conversation is going to be very one-sided after that.
It would be, aye.
But we've seen so many with addictions and different things and still be held in the regard to push. I think what Vince loved about him was, I mean, you look at like some Triple H who's come out and says how great Regal was for him and how much he learned off him. And I think he was that early on old school guy that could take these guys and work with them. And, you know, some of these guys went on to be huge. And I just think that for him, it was never his ability. Yeah, his personal issues have got to be taken into account.
Yeah.
But I think there's been many that have had these personal issues and still had that push. I honestly still just think they couldn't get the character right for him to be. Because if you look at, I mean, you couldn't imagine, you know, Steven Regal, man's man, with how he came out, being, you know, going up against Stone Cold at WrestleMania.
Aye.
In the main event. And annoyingly, I do feel that if they'd created, you know, something different with them and just got that kind of right, that it would have worked. But again, you don't know if maybe there was things in talks and then his addictions were taken over and there was that element of it as well. Unfortunate, because I do think 100% one of my favourite of all time, Regal.
Aye.
And I do think definitely underrated, definitely underrated.
I mean, just in WCW, he was put in a match against Goldberg when Goldberg was on his undefeated streak. And William Regal was like that. I'm going to go out and have a match. I'll take the loss, but I'm going to go out and I'm going to kick his arse because that's what I do.
He was asked to do that as well. He was asked to make Goldberg wrestle.
Aye.
And Goldberg
and then he was sacked for it.
Aye, because Goldberg wasn't happy, and Goldberg was the big thing at the time. So he's not happy, so we need to wrap him in cotton wool, and we need to show that we defend him.
And it's like I mean, I've seen that match, and it's like that was the first time that actually Goldberg had to actually try and wrestle.
Yeah.
And again, completely underrated in WCW. His WCW stuff was amazing as well.
Yeah, I think throughout, and again, you know, you just think it didn't quite click for him.
Aye.
And, you know, for once, I mean, the writers and producers and everything else have an element to play in that, of course they do. But it was just, I think as well, there's sometimes where it's just unfortunate. Now you can try so much, but just not having that click, whether it be the character, whether it be the addictions, whether it be anything else, that's spark's just not there. And unfortunately for him, I think it came very much later in his career. And at that point, he was never going to get a big run then because it was too far gone. Which I just think was probably the unfortunate thing for him.
Mm-hmm. But definitely he will be a future Hall of Famer.
Oh, 100%.
And if he isn't in the next 2 or 3 years, that's a travesty.
I mean, I think, don't know if I'd say, if I could see him being in it in the next 2 or 3. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he was, but I don't know if it's maybe going to be the next 5 to 10. When you look at how long some other guys have waited and stuff, maybe will it push out a bit more. But I definitely expect to see him in that at some point.
Definitely. Well, the next person on my list is starting to be getting a bit of a push just now. He's the only person on the list that's still currently a full-time wrestler, and it's Chad Gable.
So, and fun enough, I had a conversation with somebody recently about Chad Gable. I'm very much on the fence with him. So I can't work out, right, whether I like him or I can't stand him. I just can't work this out yet, because sometimes I'll watch him and just, let's say, for example, it's a 10-minute match. And for 3 minutes of that match, I'm going, very impressive, I'm really liking this. Then for a few minutes, he looks like he's a rabbit in the headlights and he doesn't have a clue. And then he does something impressive again. And you can see, I know everybody makes the comparisons, and you can see it coming through slightly, not to the same level, but slightly Kurt Angle type vibes, right? You can see this. But I don't think I'm a fan. And I was saying this, as I say, I was saying this recently, it was Monday. I just don't think I'm a fan of him. And he did then just, I haven't actually, unfortunately, watched Raw yet. But did I not read they took a bad defeat recently as well? And it looks like his push is kind of over.
Yeah.
And I've not seen it. It was just something I quickly skimmed through online. As I say, I'll probably not watch it until tomorrow. But I don't know what I can't remember now who the defeat was to, but he took some sort of defeat, and it looks like the push is kind of finished. Because you feel now, at times it feels like, I know you're not a massive football fan, Kev, right? But I'm going to use a football analogy here, right? That it's like, if you manage a football team, historically you would get a length of time to make that work. But now it's a very impatient environment. And that's how I can liken it. It's a very impatient, in football, you see some managers getting sacked after 3, 4, 5, 6 months in the job, sometimes less. And with this, you feel the same. Like if they don't feel like you're at the level, whether it be in ring, whether it be over with the fans or whatever, that they want you to be at, that push is stopping, and that's it. Well, then look, so we'll spin a wheel. There's the next guy. Let's jump on with him.
Yeah. That's what it feels like, because they've been trying to push him as a tag act since he joined in. First, it was with Jason Jordan with the Alpha Academy then.
Yeah.
And they'd done really well. And then Jason Jordan got injured and then couldn't come back. And then they put him with Otis. And I think that pairing's been really good, because they both have the amateur wrestling background. And you can see that in their in-ring ability, and they work really well together. And that tag team got over completely organically. They just put them together because it's like, these two are tag team guys. Let's put them together. And it got over so quickly, and they didn't know how to use it. And they're using Otis less and less now, and they're trying to push Chad as a singles competitor who has legitimately came in and caused Gunther to get his first loss since he won the title. And it's like, you don't just do that with some random that you're not going to push. You need to push that guy then. And it's like, they're building themselves up to have somebody that's completely underrated because if they push him, that could be a fantastic run for him.
And I mean, I totally agree. You know, when he handed Gunther his first loss, I thought, damn, this is definitely going to go somewhere.
Yeah.
100%. But you feel like, and if you look at the last, I don't know, let's go with the last 10 years, there's so many people that you watch that are over with the crowd, that you watch their in-ring work, and you're literally on the edge of your seat, you're absolutely loving it.
Yeah.
And you think they're starting to get it, and then it just goes into mediocrity.
Yeah.
And it just goes nowhere. And you're feeling like that same mistake happens with so many guys year after year after year. For me, do I think he's underrated? I'll be honest and say the only reason I'm disagreeing, and it's the only reason I'm disagreeing, is because there's still an opportunity for him to move up. As I say, personally, the now, and I had this conversation, I said to you earlier in the week, with somebody, and I'm not a fan. But just because I'm not a fan doesn't mean I can't see his ability and what he can do.
Aye.
But I think the only reason I would disagree is because he still has that potential that he does then get a really good push. You know, this could start off for him to then go and, you know, eventually get a title on him, kind of run with that. You know, do I honestly think he's ever going to be the world champion? No.
No.
Could I see him kicking about with like an intercontinental? 100%. 100%.
Aye.
Could I see him kicking about with NXT's title and kind of doing really well with that? 1,000%. You know, I could definitely see that. And maybe, and that's the thing, maybe that's the way to go though. Maybe putting something like that on him and bringing some of those matches, you know, kind of up to another level.
Yeah.
Would be a great way, because then you can move out of that and you can move on. But the now for me, you know, I was a big Kurt Angle fan, not a massive Chad Gable fan, but there's still time.
Well, I can see where you're coming from with that. I mean, he is in the prime of his career just now. So, I mean, we could just be sitting here and they've already got plans for him. And, like, you could say it's one of the greatest runs of the championship for so long. So, we'll wait and see, I suppose. But that's why I put him on the list, is because they push him, then they drop, and then push and they drop. And it's like you said, there's so many people they do that with.
Yeah. And it's frustrating as fans to watch.
It is. It is. Which leads me into my next one. Hurricane Helms, completely underrated.
I hated him. And I'll tell you why. Because yes, did they make me laugh? Of course he did. Right? I mean, I still think one of the most outstanding moments was the two-man power trip. And him for a second thinking that, you know, obviously scripted, but him thinking, yep, here we go. They two look at each other and go, nah, it's not happening. Yes, did it create maybe a lot of day kind of laughs and stuff? Yes. But I think, honestly, that was his level.
I still think that he was completely underrated just because of the comedy moments we got. I mean, they put him in a match with The Rock. We knew it was going to be a squash match. Stone Cold's music hits. He gets the win.
Yeah.
How many mid-carders can say that they've got a win over like the top guy because of Stone Cold's music?
And exactly.
And it was fantastically done.
And the thing is, though, for me, obviously, as you say, you know, for everybody, that was a shock. He was a mid-carder and that happened. You know, probably a great memory and moment for him in his career. But for me, that's as good as it's going to get. I don't think or feel like he had the ability to go further. Yes, we get a lot of great comedy moments, but for me, I just think if I had to see him on the TV any more than I did, right, I think, and the thing is, you wonder though, and obviously it's, this is all just, talking out ifs, buts and maybes, but if he was on more and he get more screen time, I'm not going to take that seriously.
Aye.
Yeah, we get some great comedy moments from him. Yes, it was fantastic. Some of the moments we got, of course it was. But that was what it was. It was comedy level. I personally think that was his level.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think, even as another character, it's going to work. I think when they got the Hurricane, I think that was the pinnacle of what he would do.
Yeah. I mean, when he was in WCW, his in-ring ability was fantastic, and he wasn't getting used enough. So he said, right, I'll work my contract out, and then I'm going to WWF. He came over. He done a few wee things before they gave him this Hurricane character, and then like, right, we're going to make you a superhero. And he's like, I'm going to run with this. He knew he couldn't get to the top with this character, but he said, I'm just going to go and just take the complete piss out myself with it, because with that type of character, you couldn't really take yourself seriously.
But that's me when I say that's, I mean, realistically, I remember him in WCW, and honestly, do you think the in-ring ability holds up to your Undertakers, your Stone Colds, your Triple H's, your Rocks without Stone Cold's music? On a consistent basis, I don't think it ever does.
I think if they built him up a bit more and got his like proper mic work done, because on the mic he wasn't that good until they gave him the Hurricane. I mean, that character was completely mid-card, and he was settled in perfectly with the Hardcore Championship and all the stuff that they were doing with that.
Yeah.
And then him coming into that, I think that was fantastic. But he's never a name that gets used enough for the Attitude Era. I mean, he was one of the key figures there for the mid-card, which is why I've put him on the list as underrated, because it's like, oh, there was that. So you think about the hardcore element and people like Raven, Kane, and people like that. They don't talk about the other people. I mean, you get Crash Holly, who was like 500 pounds apparently, walking about with his big thing. That's the stuff you remember, but you don't remember the brutality of the comedy moments with the Hurricane Helms, which is why I've put him on the list. I agree with you that it could never have been top tier, but I think it was underrated for his card.
So the reason, and this is the only reason that I'm going to disagree, is because I agree with a lot of what you're saying, but then I think he's perhaps not underrated, but maybe under-remembered.
I suppose.
Because
I
think when we agree that he's kind of, his level was his level, and brilliantly, by the way, as I say, some of the moments, not even some of the comedy moments, some of the matches that he had were really good, but I think that was his peak. I don't think he had that other gear, not even to be in the top, but just to be a guy that was in the fringe round about. Now, when we spoke earlier about you had your kind of guys there, and then you'd have the odd guy that would come in and have the match, and I don't even think he was that guy that would do that. Whether it be as the Hurricane or not, I just never felt he was that guy. I agree, under-remembered, underrated. I would need to say I wouldn't agree with that.
Well, we're coming to the last two. I'm going to mix them up because this is the one that you suggested before. Is Test. Now, I only had 9 on my list and I couldn't think. And then when you've said Test, I thought, actually completely underrated.
I do, I just get the feeling like when you had said it, and before we came on, and he says, I've got 9 here in this list, and he was the first guy that came to my mind because of how really, he was a big guy, so he was a kind of Vince guy.
He was,
in the size and the build. And he had so much ability and done so much. Was even part of some major storylines at the times, when you think about the wedding and everything else, and was very much in and about that. But then, you look at what were his accomplishments throughout the career, and I don't think they were ever at the level that they should have been.
Aye. I mean, he had a brief Intercontinental title run. He had the tag titles with Albert. I mean, TNA, that was amazing.
Yeah.
Especially when you've got Albert just coming in as this beast.
Yes.
And then you've got Test who can do like all the flips and jumps and stuff. That was a great pairing. And
I just think that when you look, I mean, at one point, he was heavily touted to become next champion.
Yeah.
Everybody was very much about it. And I know, like, everyone, he had his kind of own personal stuff going on. But, the sad matter of fact is back then a lot did. But he was touted as going to be the next champ. It very much looked like that was where all roads were leading.
Yeah.
And then he just very quickly became, I felt, underused, and anything he was doing, like matches he was in, he always put on entertaining matches. I'm not saying they were always of the highest of qualities, but they were always entertaining. Even talking, and not to the same extent, but you're talking about the hardcore element. He put in some great kind of hardcore matches and stuff like that as well.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of good from him that I just felt, when you talk about underrated, I felt that's definitely a guy that was underrated for the ability and the look, the ability, even his mic work. Could it have needed a bit of work? Of course it could have, right? Because not everybody's coming in like a Rock and can just grab a mic and do that. Who I feel was probably the only one that can. I mean, even Stone Cold initially wasn't great. And got better. The same with your Triple H's and everything else. So not everybody can be held to the caliber of the Rock and just being that natural speaker and entertainer. There was a bit of work that needed done in it, but he was by no means down there in mic work.
Yeah, aye. I mean, when they gave him the Intercontinental title, people were like, this is going to be his big push. This is what they do. They put the Intercontinental title on them. They give them a run with that. They take it off them. They build them up. They bring them into the main. They'll give them a Royal Rumble win. And then none of that came to fruition. It was just, he's just there for enhancement talent now.
Yeah. And it became like, back then there was that group of guys that were always, they had the occasional match with your top tier guys, but they were always really mid-carders.
Yeah.
Minus the occasional matches they had, it was always kind of mid-carders, and he very much then fell into that pile. And I felt, because let's be honest, with a list, and it's great that you've been through and it's been different generations and different things, you could have easily picked out a top 10 underrated from the Attitude Era, because that's how bad, not how bad, well, what I mean is that's how badly you think some of these guys would have made it, but because of the competition there, it was just very difficult. Now, you can't have, and I do agree with this, you can't have, 20 top tier guys for a business. You have to have levels. There has to be layers to that. And he, unfortunately, I think wrongly, fell into the layer of that. One other mention I would have for back then, or two, would have been Ken Shamrock and D'Lo Brown.
Oh, definitely. I mean, the reason I didn't put them on the underrated list is because I think, Ken Shamrock was on the list last week, who should have been a champion. He should have had a run. Even if it was 6 weeks for the championship, he should have had it. D'Lo Brown, I mean, his mic work wasn't fantastic, wasn't the best, but his ring work was amazing.
Ring work was
and
phenomenal.
The only thing that ever happened was his match with Draws. A move went wrong, and Draws ended up paralysed. Draws, until the day he died, spoke with D'Lo Brown weekly, and never held a bad thing against him, because it's like, that's the nature of the business. A move can go wrong, and that's it. That's all that happened.
And that's the thing, and these guys understand better than anybody that this type of stuff can happen. You know, they're in a business where, you know, you can throw somebody over the top rope wrong, you can clothesline somebody, you can punch somebody wrong, and there's going to leave damage. Unfortunately, for what happened to Draws was him being paralysed. But the point being, there's so many, you know, not just from that end. I mean, that's kind of one of the worst cases, obviously, to people passing and stuff in it. But there's so many elements of any match they're in. Something can quite quickly and easily go wrong.
Yeah.
And then that's it. So all these guys kind of know, they probably think it's never going to happen to me. But at the same time, they're not daft. They know what can happen. They know what can go wrong and what can go on. And as I say, it's unfortunate. I do think D'Lo Brown and Ken Shamrock maybe been getting honourable mentions, because, but again, you could have wrote a list just with 10 underrated Attitude Era guys.
Oh, easily. I mean, essentially that's what the list last week was. A lot of them were from the Attitude Era that should have had even like 6-week run, 8-week run. Give them from one pay-per-view to the next one. That's a month.
So obviously, Test, I'm going to agree with. So where are we at in regards to...
Test was number 9. And the reason I've left this one till last...
How many have I agreed with?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
So it's either going to be I have agreed with more, or it's a tie.
Exactly. Ooh. Let's see. The last person on my list is very underrated because of, when you look at his in-ring ability, throughout the years, it has never changed. And in fact, he's on one of the greatest runs in his life right now in AEW. And it is Goldust, Dustin Rhodes.
I absolutely love Dusty. I am 1000% in agreement. I absolutely love the guy. I actually felt that when he went to AEW, he get that fire back.
Yeah.
He get that kind of love for it. Because, I mean, he done the Goldust character phenomenally well, right? Phenomenally well. But, again, like we've spoke about with others, you're never going to see big title runs coming in regards to world titles with that character. But he played that phenomenally well. He went to AEW, and then all of a sudden, this kind of spark, this fire that you hadn't seen in a long, long time, seemed to come back. And I mean, some of the matches he put on up until now have been nothing short of outstanding.
Aye. I'm going to have to go and grab my charger now.
Aye.
I'll wait 2 minutes. I mean, considering the guy started wrestling in 1988 or 87 was his first professional match. He's been wrestling for 5 decades.
I mean, he's been wrestling, don't want to make you feel old here, Kev, longer than I've been alive.
Well, almost as long as I've been alive.
Yeah, see, almost with you, definitely with me.
I mean, I was 4 when he had his first match.
Yep, I was not
0.
even a thought. I was not even a passionate night behind the grip bin after a night out.
But, I mean, when you go and look at his career, some of the things that they've made him do, especially when he went to WCW and they made him do the 7 character, I mean, that was just
Yeah.
a rip-off of Goldust, and he wasn't wanting to do it. He left the WWF because he was tired of doing that character. He just wanted to be himself. And then they made him do this, and then he's like, no. He's like, I would rather go back and just be Goldust again. And then he went back. And when he came back as Goldust the second time, I think that was a lot better run than the end of his first run, because you could see that he was worn out. He wasn't wanting to do it anymore.
His comeback as Goldust was genuinely, for me, one of the most surprising. Because you genuinely, you remembered how he was when he had left, and you say he looked kind of tired, he looked worn out, and you weren't sure if it was because he was fed up with the character, or was it physically?
Yeah.
Because as you say, it'd been going a long, long time, and you were never sure of this. And then when he came back, and you were like, wow. And initially, it wasn't, it wasn't scheduled. It was going to have this kind of long in-ring return, and his ability just kind of went back a number of years. The fans absolutely get behind it.
Yeah.
And what I do love, though, is that he went to AEW and he got that chance to wrestle as himself and how he wants to do it.
Yeah.
And what a way to finish a career, though.
Oh, definitely. I mean, he is winding down his career. He's said that. He said he doesn't know whether it's going to be this year or next year, or whether he's going to make it to his 60th, his 6th decade.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the way he's working just now, it's like he could easily go for another 3-4 years and make it so that he can say, I've wrestled in 6 different decades. How many other wrestlers can say that have done that? A handful.
Yeah, and there's very few in that, but I think the thing is, how many could say they've done it as successfully? Because so many people, and we see it all the time, and we've spoke about it in numerous times in the show, where you see guys coming back, and now they want that last wee bit because that was all they knew. They miss all that, and they come back, and you're going, why on earth did you come back? You just absolutely wasted my memories of you. But he's been a guy that's successfully doing it and consistently doing it.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I was in the kind of camp that thought when he was going to do it in AEW, I thought, is this a bridge too far? Should he have just stopped it and, maybe done something behind the scenes, not going out and actually wrestling? I was very much in that camp, and I was in that camp right up until he had his fight with Cody.
Yeah.
And you genuinely thought, wow, talk about taking it up a gear. And then I did wonder, did you just have that extra bit in the tank because of who you were fighting?
Yeah.
And then you watch after it, and no, I definitely had that in the tank for a while yet.
I mean, that was 3-4 years ago now.
Yep.
And he's been going consistently since then. Still full time. And I mean, he's somebody else that people say should have probably had a run with the championship. I mean, could you imagine Attitude Era Goldust with the championship? Because he was having matches with the likes of Stone Cold and Triple H and The Rock.
Yeah.
Fantastic matches.
And you just felt like, and I know we can look back now and go outstanding, and I do think if he was to have won it at the time, the crowd would have went nuts.
Oh, aye.
But you just feel like behind the scenes, and it's kind of similar to when we talked about Hurricane, although I believe Goldust, Dusty Rhodes, they have a far better ability, but was it the character they just felt behind the scenes, we cannot put that belt there?
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate because he was absolutely outstanding.
It was. I mean, some of the comedy gold moments we got for Goldust. I mean, when they electrocuted him and then ended up with Tourette's.
Yeah.
That bit where he's in the ring with Triple H and Ric Flair, you can tell that's not Triple H. That's just Paul absolutely buckling at Goldust.
Many have said that he was one of the best to get them to break character.
Aye.
Because he was just brilliant at what he'd done. And he was a showman.
Yeah.
You know, he could put on that costume, that makeup, and be phenomenal. And I'm going to be honest and say his entrance back in the day was outstanding.
Definitely.
And for what people classed as a comedy character, I mean, they very much knew what he could do. And clearly, because, I mean, look at the entrance and everything they gave him. Not a lot would get that.
I know. I mean, the fact that he didn't have that many title runs at all, you would have thought with the amount of time that he spent in the company and the fact that even though, again, he had his demons, he had his addictions, he had his mental health problems, he was still there every week, consistently, for near enough 25 years. And he only had a couple of runs with like mid-card titles and the tag titles.
Yeah.
So that's why I've put him as number one, as the completely underrated.
Got to say, that's one that I agree with. So we were 6 I agreed, 4 I disagreed.
Yep. And I'm going to throw in an honourable mention just now, because, again, seen mostly as a comedy act, R-Truth.
Yes, I do think with a different character, a different time, he very much is held in much higher regard than he is now.
Yeah.
And the guy doesn't age.
No, he hasn't aged. I mean, you see his when he came in as K-Quick, and then you look at him now, and it's like, your hair's got longer, and you've got more piercings. I've aged about 60 years in the 30 years you've been in this business.
Yes, it's frightening, but his in-ring ability is outstanding.
And it's like, but what the hell? What drugs is he taking that I can't take? But I mean, he's due for a return as well. I think they should just bring him back with the 24/7 title.
That'd be phenomenal. He found it in the bin.
He found it in the bin. And he's the only person that legitimately got Brock Lesnar to break character.
That's right.
I'm coming for you at the Royal Rumble, Paul Heyman.
Aye, that's right.
Because he's really good friends with Brock Lesnar, because they came in roughly at the same time. So they've been both there full time. And then it's like, they would just sit and joke about stuff. And then Vince was like, to him, go make Brock laugh on air. Is that okay? And off he went.
I know, he's definitely, I think, definitely underrated.
Mm-hmm. And you look at his in-ring ability as well as like the comedy gold that we've got. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And then when he was on his heel run with The Miz, I thought that was fantastic.
Yes.
They should have pushed both of them to the top then.
But I've definitely enjoyed this tonight.
It's been good.
Doing a wee kind of list like this, I've definitely enjoyed that and brought back a few memories of guys that I haven't thought about in the wrestling for years.
Well, there's always more things that I sit and go, I wonder about that.
But no,
they just try to get us all together at the same time.
I know, which is now proving a nightmare. But if there's one consistent here, Kev, it will be you.
I think it seems to be. I'm the consistency.
So we're all screwed.
Definitely. If I'm the consistent one, then oh my God.
But no, I've definitely enjoyed this.
It's been good. It's good. Doing something different. I mean, we're still trying to get the should WWE erase CM Punk?
No.
I mean, that's next on the list. I think I'll sit out for that and let you and Andy fight that one out.
Yeah, they should not. ridiculous to even think that.
Well, we'll see how that one pans out.
You and I both know right now, Kev, Andy's going to edit this, Andy's going to see this. You and I sitting here just now both know that's a no. And
Well,
you can't answer because you know that is correct.
We kept in Chris Benoit and we kicked out Rey Mysterio. Anything can happen.
There's very few things in life that are certain. This is a certainty.
Is that a spoiler?
Do you know what? Call it what you will. Call it a spoiler. Call it anything you like. It is a guarantee. In fact, I guarantee.
Well, on that note, we'll leave you here and let us know if you have anybody else that you could have added to the list, or if you agree with anybody. I mean, overall, it seems to be that I was on the nose with underrated wrestlers. So let us know, and till next time, see ya.
Yes.